All right, good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for coming to the Startup Grind event for Austin. My name is Michelle, and I work for the company CodeAdvantage. We are honored to be one of the sponsors for this event. We work with startup companies and small and medium-sized businesses and really help integrate additional HR services with payroll and benefits. Really, so the small employer can be competitive to much larger organizations. We're very excited for tonight's event. If you haven't introduced yourself to me, please do afterwards. Love to meet with you. But I'm really going to turn this over to Kim right now. Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle.
Hello, everyone. I'll keep it brief. My name is Peter Singer. I have a company, Lunatech Solutions, and we're happy to be here this evening as well. Thanks to Kim and RC for an exciting night ahead. Quick intro of my company. We're an IT consulting and staffing organization. More specifically for this audience, the type of services that we offer, mainly for startup and mid-sized companies, are targeted in terms of our ability to develop world-class software products. And so we have a number of different services that are managed services. We provide CTO as a service, engineering teams as a service, and so happy to be a part of this, and very welcome to meeting all you folks later this evening after RC and Kim speak. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, thanks everybody for coming. This is Startup Grind. We do a monthly Fireside Chat series here in this room on the first Tuesday of every month. Thank you, RC, for being here with us tonight. Let's give him a warm Startup Grind welcome. Okay, so we want to learn more about you. So tell us about your family, where you grew up.
I didn't know that would be the first question. So first, before I do that, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. I'm sorry that everyone has to listen to an eternity tonight. I'll try to keep my boring to a minimum. But actually, before we start, can I actually ask the crowd a couple of questions? Is that okay? All right, perfect. So first of all, who here is an attorney? Oh, I thought maybe I'd have somebody trying to learn. I obviously haven't done anything impressive for attorneys. Okay, so all right, so that's good. So entrepreneurs? Yeah, okay, good. All right, so that's good. I'm happy to share any kind of tidbits I can, especially about negotiating a better rate with your attorneys, which I'm sure you'll appreciate. And but no, I'm glad I got a little bit of reading of the room of it, so hopefully you will enjoy some of the things that I have to talk about. So, and then I guess I'm supposed to talk about family, right?
Yeah, talk about your family, where you grew up, and your background.
So I actually was born in Brazil. I'm pretty confident my parents were running drugs out of Rio. I mean, you laugh, but my uncle says they had really great stuff that they pulled out of my diaper whenever we came off of the airplane. So I think I was a drug mule. Started out there. This is video. You said that, right?
It is video.
I think I was a drug mule. All right. So for the first 2 years of my life, then I lived all around Sacramento, San Jose, California, Dominican Republic, running away from the law. Just kidding. And then ended up in San Antonio. Went to Stanford undergrad. Worked in the startup world. That bombed in 2001, 2002 after the first bubble burst out there, and then moved into sales, and then went to law school, and then ended up here. But family, come from a small family. My sister and I, my parents, they divorced, and raised by a single mom. So always trying to prove things to her. So. It's pretty much, yeah. Who can relate? Yeah, there you go, right. Proving stuff to mom. All right, yeah. So that's a little bit about the background.
Got it, okay, good job.
Yeah.
So was anybody in your family entrepreneurial?
So it's a good question. Actually, my grandmother was. I take a lot of pride in this, and I think this became a really great resonating thing for our family, is my grandmother, who, she passed away when I was like 16, but she actually was the first female, so I've been very surrounded by a lot of strong women in my life, and my father's mother was the first female franchise owner of a National Van Lines franchise. And for if maybe you might have seen like National Van Lines moving companies or something like that. They're like national, obviously. And her friend, so she was the very first female to own one of those in California. Well, nationwide, but she was based out of California, and she started that. I think she owned it starting in like the 60s. So she was very shrewd with her money. That she was making as an assistant. She actually worked as like an executive assistant in the same moving storage company my grandfather worked in, and she saved up some money, negotiated with the owner to take it over and be a franchise owner, which I think is kind of cool. So that's kind of the inspiration for our family, and a lot of our family, those that are entrepreneurs, followed in her footsteps. Really on my dad's side of the family. So
That's awesome. Okay, so when and how did you get involved in the startup community?
Yeah, so that is, anybody here a crazy entrepreneur that has, entrepreneur that has like just a crazy idea and you have this really big passion and you know it's gonna work? Anybody here, entrepreneurs, right? Exactly. So I listened to somebody that had one of those ideas. Not necessarily because I thought it was a great idea, but it was really fascinating. I actually got a corporate job right after law school. And then one of the guys I went to law school with had this really great idea that he's now the CEO of this startup that we co-founded together. But he had this really crazy idea. He said, hey, let's start an equity crowdfunding portal. And I was like, is that even legal? And it wasn't at the time. It wasn't like 3 or 4 years ago when he told me, let's do it. And I said, I think that's crazy. I don't know how we're going to get anyone to do it. And he said, yeah, but you're like a sales guy, so you can get people to give us money for it. I was like, wow, that's crazy. And so he convinced me, hey, let's start exploring this. And I said, well, you're a better lawyer than I am, so why don't we start a law firm together? And he said, well, I've been working out of this co-working space in San Antonio called Geekdom. This was like the infancy of it, like 4 years ago. And I was living up here in Austin. I'd left my corporate job. And he said, let's develop our startup out of here. And I said, all right, but you have to do legal work for me. And he was working out of Geekdom, and I walked in and I was like, so wait a minute, you're in a space with all these entrepreneurs. And I said, are there any other lawyers in here? He said, no, I think I'm the only one. I was like, okay. So seeing the business opportunity in front of me, I said to him, okay, so here's what we're gonna do. I'm going to meet everybody here in Geekdom, and you're going to do their legal work after I bring them in. And he said, okay, if you think there's like a good idea in doing that. And so he was working for another law firm at the time, and he was just moonlighting there in Geekdom. And I had just started my firm up here in Austin, so I'd go down there like 2 or 3 days a week. And then we ended up starting a firm together, and eventually had one partner that we got rid of and brought in another partner. And so that's how we really got started. It wasn't really necessarily because I thought, it's not because I'm a tech guy or a startup guy. I'm not. I've happened into that, right? But I came from a sales world, and I'm pretty business oriented, and so I saw the opportunity in front of us. I saw not a lot of other competitors that I had to worry about. I saw just tons of potential customers, and all you had to do was actually like sell them on your product, right? So captive audience, basically, right? And so a lot of them, of course, the big struggle with working with startups, especially in the beginning, is a lot of them don't have money, but you end up getting a lot better at figuring out who you work for that can pay, and doing a really good job of parsing your time between those that you're helping out for free and then those that you're charging, and just kind of end up being able to build it up, and that's how I ended up building it up. But I got into it because of my law partner, who's now CEO of our startup, who had this space in Geekdom, and I said, this is great. So once I did that, then that's when I got a membership at Capital Factory. Don't tell them that, because I wasn't supposed to be in here, actually. I got in under another company's name as their general counsel. So, but now, like, tons of people know me here, and I get a lot of clients out here. So, but yeah, I worked here, and then I'm a mentor at Tech Ranch now, and so I've been in a lot of co-working spaces, so I opened it up by once I saw work at Geekdom, I was like, I can do it at Capital Factory, I can do it at Tech Ranch, and so that's mostly where we get our clients too, so.
So that proved to be a successful model for you.
Yeah, I mean, it was a successful model for us, and I think just so it's like relevant to people, like really, I mean, I'm not doing anything different than people that are, entrepreneurs finding a particular niche in their particular business. You got to find a place where you have like a wealth of potential clients, and if you can find a place where you don't have a lot of competitors that are jumping around, that are going to be working against you, then it just makes it even easier. So most of my time in building up our law practice, I've tried to stay away from competitors. Not that I can't win people from competitors, but I would just rather be in a place where I don't have to worry about competitors. So I mean, like, there's plenty of business to go around, and I'd rather put myself in a place where I don't have to really worry about a lot of competitors. So think about it for your own business models. I see a lot of business models where I have somebody starting up a business that comes into our office, and I'm like, you have so many competitors. What are you thinking? Like, it's tough, and sometimes they just want a little sliver of their, the larger market, but which sometimes works, but sometimes not. It just depends on which path you want to take. So
it sounds like you were successful at that. So what was your process, and how did you get everybody in these, the first co-working space and then Capital Factory? How did you get them as clients?
So, and again, relevancy for things outside of the law. Being able to get clients out of this in any kind of sales. So I am first and foremost a salesman. So, and I think that especially if you're building your product or your company and you don't have good sales acumen, find someone that does, as a partner or a friend or a mentor. I learned when I went to law school that I was one of the few people that came from the sales world that went into law, and I found out that I had a really unique niche because a lot of attorneys are not very good at selling. So the way that I was able to build this up was getting my fellow partners, and so when I say that, it's not like I'm selling myself. I don't sell myself. I sell my product, right? So my product is the other attorneys I work with. I wouldn't be anywhere without the really good attorneys that I work with. I went to Stanford. It's an okay school. And so it's like, and then I actually did not go to a very good law school. I went to St. Mary's. It's the only school I applied to in Texas. It was in San Antonio, and because I grew up there. And but I've always, I know what my strength is, and my strength is in sales. And I saw my product as my fellow attorneys that could really get things done. The guy who had a really good trademark acumen or securities acumen, or somebody that had done a really good job in real estate or litigation. And so every step of the way, anyone who I've worked with is someone who I can sell the hell out of them, right? And so the way that I would build the practice out of Geekdom or Capital Factory or TechCrunch or wherever was I would make the initial contact, and then I would find out what someone's pain point was, right? Or see if they had a pain point in the legal aspect, and then match them with the right guy that I had in my book of attorneys that I worked with, and then did some matchmaking essentially, and said, hey, you have this issue, I have this guy, let's get in a room and let's talk about it. And pretty soon, like when you have really sharp attorneys that you're working with, like the potential client ends up just like they start leaning in the conversations. It was kind of magical, like especially with Nathan, the first one, my principal partner. Like I would put him in the room with a prospect, and they would just kind of like lean forward like more and more. And after like 20 minutes, like they might as well be like horizontal. Like they were just like listening to him, just really impressed by his legal acumen and his ability to make things relevant. And so I had to train the attorneys also to speak in a certain way, because then I would say, hey, they're looking to you to be the expert, right? So like, and I guess you can do this on your own. Again, make it irrelevant for non-legal. Yeah, if you're not the same, it's hard to be the sales guy and the expert, and you can be. I'm not saying you can't be, but it's really great if you have the sales guy that can talk you up and can tell you, this is how I'm going to present someone to you, and I need you to be the expert. I need you to be really sincere and know what the hell you're talking about. I want to put him in front of you. I want to make you look really good, and that's pretty much how we did it. So, and then I found a few other attorneys that would let me pimp them out. So yeah, and that was pretty much how that happened. So. Yeah.
So what would you say, if you had to say one thing that was the most influential factor in helping you along the way?
Not wanting to be broke. So yeah, and I think any entrepreneur can understand that as well, right? So like I left a really nice corporate job and just because I wanted to work on my own. And one of the things that I firmly believe in, and I think it came from my sales background, and I'll see it with a lot of, and by the way, sometimes this can hurt you. There's a negative side to this, is I really believe in closing the back doors, right? Closing all the exits, right? You're essentially putting yourself on a one-way trajectory, and you don't have any other escape routes at that point. And so I really believe in, again, the phrasing is closing the back doors. So I quit a job. I didn't really purposefully burn a bridge, but our company that I'd left had gotten bought by a VC firm, and once I left, they were not going to take me back, so I knew that wasn't an option. I had a non-compete, so I couldn't compete in my same sector. There was very few things I could actually really do, and so it got me very focused on building up a business plan and creating a plan of action, and building it up so that I could, make money, right? So, because savings from that company only lasted for so long. So, I could say there's something else that was a really big thing that inspired me, but my big thing was I knew I didn't have any other options. I had to make it work, and just closing those back doors and wanting to survive and be successful was really big. Now, I've seen some other people, unfortunately, throw it all away, but maybe not do. And there's let's say throw it away. A lot of people who have that same kind of vision and close all those back doors, and they fail, and for one of two reasons. They didn't plan well, or they didn't execute well, which is big, right? You have this great idea, but you haven't figured out how to plan or execute, right? Let's say you're the idea guy, but you don't have a good sales guy, and you never found a good sales guy. That's just one example, but there's so many different ways you can fail that way. But sometimes also your product just might not be right for the market, right? You might do everything right, but it just might not be the right thing. I knew going into this that there was a market for what I was doing, because Austin had a lot of attorneys, but I knew I was a good salesman, and so I knew I could differentiate from attorneys because I could sell. So I knew there was enough of a market here that I could get into. And then once I found out startup, within just a few months after talking to my partner, that's when I knew, oh, okay, so we'll niche that even more into the startup space. But so the thing that really motivated me was just knowing that I didn't really have any other options. So being broke. So yeah.
And did you have advisors that you worked with at that point?
Yeah, so I have and I really believe in that in the industry. So there's this one particular attorney who's an entertainment law attorney, actually, but works on a lot of securities law. And he was a very influential advisor to me. I was asking him, he'd been in the large law firm environment, so he was a great person to pick his brain about building something and when I built the practice, I was like, I want to build something that he would want to leave his law firm to go join up for. So it was a little bit weird, but he would tell me, this is what I look for as an attorney, this is the kind of clients I look for. And so I was kind of ambitious in the fact that I wanted to be the guy that was at Jackson Walker, right? Because when I left my firm, when I left my corporate job, I didn't really have an opportunity to go to a Jackson Walker or a large law firm. So I ended up looking to him to say, what kind of firm do I have to build that would attract talent like you that I could work with? And that was really kind of a way that I looked at it. So he was really, really influential to me. And then I actually had, from my sales days, a guy that I worked with who became, so even though I was a lawyer, I knew my strength was in sales. So I told him, hey, listen, I'm an attorney. Now, we haven't talked in 6 years. I'm trying to really refine my approach with approaching clients. And so he was a really great resource for me, Jamie. He was just I would bounce ideas off of him of selling legal services. He was like, it's just like when I used to have you slinging office supply accounts, man. It's the same thing, just different client, right? And so he would help me kind of refine my approach for the legal space. And so I had one guy who's an attorney, and I was trying to think, how can I find talent like him that would want to work with me, because I knew I had a good product, and I needed to find product to sell and get attorneys for the product to sell. And then I needed a guy who could help me out with my sales approach. That's the way I did it. So.
Awesome. Okay. And then I kind of want to shift gears a little bit. Can we talk a little bit about the investing that you do?
Right, yeah. So, so one of the things, the benefits of being in the sales side of things is that, so that I make a lot of connections and networks. And so one of the connections that I made was with a gentleman who runs funds for his, well, he's created funds. He went to law school as well, but he ends up creating like 2 or 3 different kind of funds. Comes from a wealthy family, knows a lot of people who are wealthy through his family's business. And then he had said, I met him for coffee once, and he said, you know, I've been thinking about creating a fund for technology companies. And he's like, but I don't know the first thing about technology. And I told him, I don't know the first thing about technology either, but I know someone that does. And so, and that was that partner, Nathan, who, and so we ended up all sitting together, and that's not true, I know plenty about technology, but we sat down, all 3 of us, and we brainstormed on how could we make a fund work. And so we created a seed investment fund, which we didn't really have a good thesis, but now we're actually on a fintech thesis, which is really, we're doing a really good job of focusing and narrowing in on that now. Just kind of took a little bit of time to get there. But yeah, so we created a fund together. We had the legal background to be able to do the fund documents, so that was really easy. Nathan and I could do that. And then Bolton brought the investors, and you know, we're still fundraising in it. Bolton does most of the fundraising, and we scout out potential investment opportunities. And funnily enough, none of our clients in the firm have ever been investment targets for the fund. We try to keep that separate. Not that I would overlook it, but just no one has ever really, no one that's a client has ever really fit the thesis essentially for the fund. But so that's kind of how it happened. You just build up a network. Someone trusts you enough, and they say, I want access to what you have access to. And you know, like I said, I worked amongst Capital Factory, Beacon, TechCrunch, all that stuff. So I had a lot of early access to startups, and so that's what made it appealing to partner up with somebody that had the capital and the connections to create a fund, and so that's how we did that. So.
Sure. And what do you look for companies that you want to be part of the fund?
Sure. So now it's pretty much fintech-focused companies that can pitch to community banks. Like if you can't, because we have this connection through Bolton's family to community banks across the United States. And so, and there's never any guarantee, but if there is a company that is a fintech startup that their channel is to sell into community banks, that is something we want to be connected with, because strategically we can probably help them grow even more, right? So, I mean, they have to be a really great product to put in front of all those people, but that's really what we search out now. So we had our first exit, which was great. Fintech space got sold to a publicly traded company, and modest exit, but kind of a really kind of cool like first step, and that was in the fintech space. And so we're hoping to kind of like build out off of that. So
it sounds like that is pretty niched.
Yeah, it's niched now at this point. It wasn't like about a year ago, but now it's definitely gotten more niche into the fintech space. Yeah. Because we want to provide value and really see. So one of the things that I've learned in the legal side of things, because we represent entrepreneurs and investors, is there's a lot of investors who, and we were doing this too, who don't really focus on an area that they know they can really add value in for their investees, for their book of business. And at first, like, and you can tell, like with our first investments, we just thought, oh, it's a really great opportunity, but we didn't really have any connections or like strategic advantage that we could provide for them. We were just money for them. And if you are, and that's why I learned more about dumb money and smart money in investment, right? So, which I used to think was stupid, like you just needed money, just, right? So everybody, as the attorney too, because I wanted to get paid by the clients that were fundraising, I was like, just freaking take his money. He doesn't care. It doesn't matter if he's smart or dumb. It's just like, just take his money. You can do stuff with the money. But you end up learning that like the company has a greater chance of success if they take money from people that know the industry or can make connections or strategic partnerships. And not to say that you can't do it without people that have like, I mean, $500,000 is a lot you can do with, I'm just throwing that out as a dollar amount. Let's say you're fundraising $500,000 do I want $500,000 from people that have no connections in the industry that I'm selling into, or would I rather get $500,000 from, you know, like 10 investors that all have connections in my industry? I'd rather get the ones that, you know, or would I get, or even $400,000 or $300,000, $200,000. I might be able to do a lot more with a lot less money if I have the strategic investors. And so I learned that through that process. Now I'm totally forgetting the thread of the question you were asking about, but point being so I learned a lot through that process of now having our own little fund on getting those strategic partnerships in place, and niching a lot more and finding that smart money. So.
Do you have plans to expand into other niches?
Probably not on the fund, anytime soon. We'll probably stay in the fintech space because there's a really robust opportunity. Fintech is really growing out here, so there's like a lot of opportunity in that space. I also have another venture, or you're going to ask about the other venture? MassVenture too? You're talking about that later, so that's okay. But I mean, one of the benefits of being in this kind of space too is I end up doing a lot of stuff in other areas like the other startup I have, and I'll let you ask about that later. So, and that one is more an equity crowdfunding for, startups, or right now we're sticking to real estate, and that one really will scale out to businesses outside of real estate. So there's a lot of different ways we try to stay in stuff, but the fund is going to be pretty narrow on that stuff, on that on fintech. Yeah.
And can you tell us what is fintech?
Financial technology sector. So yeah, so startups in the financial technology sector. So good example is like one of our portfolio companies is called Unwired Nation, and they are a company that does they do mobile apps for banks, right? And I think a lot of us take for granted that our banks have mobile apps, but you might have a community bank in Abilene, Texas that doesn't really have much of one, or Odessa, or some other small town, maybe in like Nebraska or whatever, and they don't have a mobile app, right? So that's why our connection is really good for that, because we can then get them access to a lot of community banks that need an app built, right? And you're like, wow, that seems like a really simple solution. Like people can build apps like easy, but they've got a platform that's really easy to build and layer upon, and so it's easy deployment, really quick. So built specifically for that regulatory environment. So.
So I'm going to refer you to my bank, which is a small local bank, and we do not have a mobile app.
See,
and they're here in Dripping Springs.
Well, then yeah, I want the name, because
South Star Bank.
I love that, because we'll make more money if they keep scaling. So yeah, it's great.
It'd be awesome if we had a mobile app.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. So let's talk about MassVenture a little bit since you brought it up.
So MassVenture. So going back to that one law partner, Nathan, the total legal savant. He's the one that came to me before we started the law firm together and said, let's do this startup. And so originally, this was actually in the news in the past couple of weeks. Has anyone heard of the SEC and Title III, the Jobs Act? All right, 1, 2, okay. So a little color on this. In 2012, Congress passed something called the Jobs Act. There were several titles in it. The one that is of chief relevance to us here is Title III. Title III was supposed to get enacted within 270 days of the passage of the law in 2012, or the Jobs Act. But the SEC only literally last week, maybe I think it was last week actually approved the rules that will now be implemented by the first quarter of next year. And basically, what Title III was everyone here knows Kickstarter and Indiegogo? Okay, crowdfunding portals. So the idea is crowdfunding, so and really communities of people who use Kickstarter and Indiegogo. The best example of why you would want to do equity crowdfunding, and also getting to me explaining it, is the Oculus Rift. Everyone remember the Oculus Rift, the VR technology goggles? So those VR technology goggles they had at the time like the largest ever raise on Kickstarter. So Kickstarter, basically you give money and you get a reward. You can get like a t-shirt or a tweet, or maybe like a pre-order of the actual VR kit that Oculus Rift is doing, or whatever product you're getting. And Oculus Rift, I think people were spending like $1,500 a pop, you know, for a set. Developer kits were a little more. And they raised over $1 million. That was a larger number, I forget the number now. I used to tell the story very well. But they ended up raising all this money, and in that process, or not soon after, or not long after, Facebook bought them for 1.2 billion, some insane valuation, right?
2 billion.
2 billion? Yeah. See, I used to tell the story a lot better. Right. So huge, right? So imagine, what if you gave $1,500 to VR or to Oculus Rift to start off their product? Do you want the $1,500 in a VR headset, or do you want the $1,500 in stock? Hell yeah, you want it in stock. $1,500 could have bought you a lot of stock in Oculus Rift. And so that was actually a story that really kind of like helped advance that narrative that non-accredited investors should be able to invest in private securities. Well, why can't you walk down the street and invest? Why can't you invest in your buddy's startup? Well, I mean, you might be able to if you avoid the SEC laws, but really, SEC laws from post, the stock market crash in the 30s prevent non-accredited investors from investing in private securities, right? This is why you can't ask anyone off the street to invest in your company. And if you do, you're breaking the law, but I won't turn you in. So non-accredited investors, that's like 2% of America. That's not a lot of people that qualify as an accredited investor. So you have a really small pool of people that you can draw from. So that's how the rule, up until I guess last week, exists, right, or has existed for a long time. And so I am actually getting to answering your question. But so the Jobs Act was something that was really revolutionary. The idea that under Title III, you could actually have registered crowdfunding portals similar to Kickstarter and Indiegogo, but you could actually offer private securities and not just rewards-based stuff, right? So that finally got implemented last week, but essentially my partner, Nathan, and I, before we became law partners, we became partners in this venture. He said, let's each throw in some money for development and let's start a portal for Title III. And so this was like 2013 now, or 2012. And so we totally misjudged the implementation by the SEC, like completely blew that. And so we'd spent some money, built a portal, but like that we couldn't use. And then I had a friend who was a lobbyist here in Austin. So I belong to a lot of networking groups, which is how I sell the legal services. And one of them is Young Men's Business League out here in Austin, really great guys. One of the guys was a lobbyist in there. And I said, hey, we've heard some scuttle about like how there's these rules won't be implemented by the SEC, but some states are taking it upon themselves to act under state-specific laws to start equity crowdfunding. So you'd have to operate under state laws, which means there's a couple limitations. You can't take money from all across the country. You can only take it from like in your state, and the company has to be in your state. And 80% of the money that is deployed by the company has to be invested in the state. So there's some restrictions, but overall you essentially get the same thing that you wanted under the Jobs Act, which is you can crowdfund, right? And Texas is a pretty damn big state, and so I asked him, hey, if we wanted to do something on the state level, what would we do? And he said, I would talk to these legislators, and if you're lucky, if you do a good job talking to them, then they'll set you up with the State Securities Board, and then you can talk to them, and maybe you can do some rule writing along with the State Securities Board. So we followed his game plan, and after like about 6 months, we talked to enough legislators. We had this interim charge by the state, by Judge Strauss, Speaker Strauss's office, and then we got a referral to the State Securities Board, and we helped them write rules that got implemented in Texas last year. And so we were the first crowdfunding portal approved under the state laws. So we already built a portal. We have offerings up right now. If you go to MassVenture.com, so we'll plug for MassVenture.com. We have 2 active deals up right now, which are really awesome. We decided to niche in the vertical in the real estate space first. So they're both really easy raises, like both under $100,000. Like your returns will come back like 15-something% within 9 to 12 months. They're really awesome deals, actually. Really kind of like, I mean, I should never say I can't promise it. This is on video, so I actually just realized what I can and cannot promise. I would never promise anything anyway, but point being is check out the deals. I think they're really awesome deals, and I'm really excited about the portal in general. So go to massventure.com, judge for yourself. That's lawyer speak right there. So we started that. Recently, the laws changed. The SEC is going to open it up nationwide. We're ready for that, which is really cool. But our whole idea on that startup space was democratizing investment, right? Because right now, entrepreneur is a big thing that's facing them. We face it every day when people walk into our offices. It's a pain in the ass to raise money, and it's expensive. Like, if you come in and you ask me for the PPM and the securities documents to raise money, I'm going to charge you between $15,000 and $30,000, and that's to do it legally. So you can imagine how many people don't do it legally, and then when you don't do it legally, you get into big trouble, or some people are turned off by investing in you because you don't have all the right documents, right? So, I mean, that can be very frustrating as an entrepreneur. One of the nice things that I like about this, even though, there'll always be work for my law firm to do anyway, one of the things that I really like about this crowdfunding concept, the equity crowdfunding concept, is that, and it's going to be hard in the beginning, just like when we did these state rules, it's actually a pain in the ass to put your offering up. We found out just because of the regulatory hurdles. But, that's the nice thing about technology. It'll end up getting easier and easier, right, as people figure out ways to make things simpler. But what I like about, point being, is what I like about all these rules and all these opportunities is that they make it easier for the entrepreneur to find investment, ideally, and more cost effective for them to do the fundraising. And if you can imagine, like one of the nice things about Kickstarter and Indiegogo is that you're getting validation from a community of people that believe in you, right? So if I were on Kickstarter and I was raising $1 million, I might have 5,000 backers. Well, what if those people had equity too, and have people that are going out and saying, hey, use this product, I own a piece of it, right? That's really powerful. And so I see that as a really big game changer, and that's why I was on board with the concept. So that's a little bit about MassVenture, but it's all under the sphere of equity crowdfunding, which I'm a huge proponent of. And if you're an entrepreneur and you're seeking investment, you might be too early stage for it, but it's still something worth looking at. So, yeah.
Sounds really neat. Okay, yeah. So right now you're focused on 2 real estate ones going?
Yeah, on MassVenture. Yeah, right. Right now we're focused on the real estate world, but we will be opening that up to businesses I don't know exactly when, but the idea eventually is to open up to businesses.
So are you going to open it up to certain niches at once, or just make it?
Probably niches. The 2 deals that are out there right now are actually businesses that are real estate focused, right? So they're actually really businesses that are real estate focused, and we're looking for businesses that are like that. And then eventually, go out from there, right? Because you can imagine the power of it, right? Let's say that there's a restaurant that wants to fundraise, or a brewery that wants to fundraise. If you get a lot of people that would be consumers that would invest in it, that might be a really powerful way to continue to get business coming out to that, facility. I actually wouldn't say restaurants, but a good brewery, like Zilker Brewery or something like that. I wish they had crowdfunding with us. That would have been awesome. So yeah, I think there's a lot of opportunity in that, and we'll kind of grow up from there. So
as far as investing, there seems like so many different options out there.
Yeah.
What would you suggest to somebody with a startup or an idea for a startup? Where do they go, and what would be
find investors, right?
Yeah, what would be your suggestion in navigating that space and raising money?
So there's a lot of really good places that you can network with people that know people who invest, or whether you have straight investors, right? So some investors that I know, so you have to be willing to get out there and network. So some of the better investors that I know, not better investors, it's not true. There's no better or worse depending on different groups, but some people get too caught up in the fact that, hey, be a member of Capital Factory because there's investors. And there's a lot of mentors that are investors here, but try catching them on a Wednesday. They're not always around, right? And so that's not to be critical of Capital Factory, because I think Capital Factory is great and does a lot of stuff for the community, but you're not gonna, it's not like it's teaming with investors here, right? You wanna find places that may not necessarily, you might not even know. Like that one group I was in, Young Men's Business League, some of my best friends, some clients, some friends, guys who I met through there introduced me to people who were investors or who are investors themselves. And then I know other people in that group who are entrepreneurs who ended up finding an investor in that particular, group of peers, right? So there's organizations like that, people who you might meet through Entrepreneurs Organization, EO, if you haven't met them already, people who are involved in organizations like called TechChange, or myriad of other organizations that bring professionals in. Heck, even like I belong to like a Symphony Young Professionals organization, right? I sit on the board of one of those. Like there's investors in a lot of different spaces, and if you're an entrepreneur seeking investment, I think it's important to like events like this are great, but then for this event, you also need to be at like 5 or 6 or 7 other ones as well. Like you can't just stick into one little community, right? Because you're going to end up seeing the same people, and you might not mix enough. And you want to be exposed to people who are Central Texas Angel Network investors, or entrepreneur organization entrepreneurs who are also investors, or people that are in the different civic organizations. Like you just have to, try to find your spheres of influence, and then you'll naturally come across people who are investors. I mean, it's naturally going to happen. I say it's naturally going to happen, but I really do think it is, right? You have to be like strategic about where you're spending your time, and making sure your spheres of influence, like have like a diverse enough group of things. Like there's probably like, and I see this mistake made a lot. I think it's because of my sales background that I'm able to identify this mistake, is that a lot of people who are entrepreneurs who are fundraising, they're staying in the same circle of people all the time. They're going to the same events with the same faces and the same people. That's the biggest mistake they make. They're not diversifying their network. And so again, try to find different spaces, whether it's like a chamber of commerce that's really focused up in North Austin, or like Spectrum, like that Texas State runs. Just be willing to mix in different areas so that you're diversifying your potential network. So.
And then once you go to those events, do you encourage people to just talk to everybody about their idea?
Well, maybe not. I think the thing that I find more effective is like, I don't go up to everybody I meet and say, hey, I'm a lawyer, how can I be your lawyer today, right? Or tomorrow, right? So, I don't do it that way. And I think it's the same. And by the way, I actually have experience fundraising, because that startup that we started, we raised it $300,000, and I brought in like 2/3 of it. So it's not like I haven't done the fundraising thing. So I understand what that's like. And I think that, you will, if you've built up really good, genuine, good relationships with people, and you're passionate about talking about what you do, like I think that a lot of times, and so you have to be ready to ask for something, right? Like if somebody, it's like in the sales world that I always think about, like I always wait for buying signals, but once I see a buying signal, I pounce on it. So like I might have like somebody, like one of our investors that I met through one of my networks got introduced to me through another guy in the network, we were in the same group together, and I had no idea that he was an investor at the time, actually. I knew he was a guy that was doing really well, I didn't know he actively invested in stuff. And then found out through the other friend said, hey, you're doing this crowdfunding thing, my friend is interested in crowdfunding thing, why don't you go talk to him? And then once he and I sat down for a coffee, then you better believe I was all over him for his money. But he also knew me beforehand. So like he and I knew each other well enough that we both have a genuine relationship, that he trusted me, and when we talked about it, like he believed in me enough because he knew me on a personal level, right? And so I try not to push myself, whether it's like that startup when I was seeking for investment, or the legal services. Not so much an issue with the fund, because everybody and their mother is trying to get money from the fund, which I've learned, which is fine. The crowdfunding, fundraising, and the law, it's a lot better to build up really genuine relationships with a good sphere of influence, people, again, overlapping spheres of influence, right? So you have other people that you've turned into advocates for you, because I find that most of the either investors or clients that I get are because someone else has spoken highly of me in a particular peer group. And I think that especially because it's a small community, by the way, Austin is a super small community. Like, I've been here 4 years and I know a lot of people, which is unreal to me. And granted, I network a lot, but it is unreal to me how many people I know here. And after just 4 years. So if you're treating people well, you're being genuine, you're being passionate about what you're talking about, and you know what you're talking about. Again, I think the mistake is, I can't say it enough because I keep coming back to it. Make sure you have a myriad of different networks so that you have enough advocates that you've created in your sphere so that other people are talking about you, because that personal referral will make people more interested in using you or investing in you or any of that. So that's kind of the most important thing I think for anybody out there. So
create advocates.
Yeah, create advocates. Have a sparse enough network. Don't stay in the same little bubble, right? Have a network here, a network there. A little overlap is fine, but create networks so that you have advocates out there that are pushing for you. And it's going to make your sales pitch a lot easier, a lot better. Eventually someone will come around, and you got to treat people well. That goes without saying anywhere, but again, because Austin's such a small community, there was a client of ours who was a friend who I met here at Capital Factory. It was like a demo day. This is not on the startup side, but on the law firm side. I'd been in Austin 3 months, and it was one of those startup crawl things. It was when startup crawl was not. Now startup crawl is actually really crowded and kind of a pain in the ass to go to, but 3 years ago it was great. You could actually still get up here on an elevator, and it wasn't totally crammed. And I met him here. He had a company, and he was trying to get going. They ran out of funding, but he sold to another company that really believed in part of his product. They niched into that product. They just closed $1 million of funding, finance. They got another $200,000 after that acquisition. They just closed last month another $1 million. And this guy who's the CEO, who's a really good friend of mine, first and foremost a friend, great client, but first and foremost a friend. And that's, by the way, why he is a client, because we became such great friends that he's even if I don't have the answer, he'll trust me to get the answer from somebody else. And which I think that brings me far more, that makes me far happier that someone will put that kind of trust in me than getting a paycheck, than getting a check from them. But so that's huge. But he's good to people. He really did a very good job of keeping his network really extended, going to new areas. And people that passed on his investment, people passed on his investment, but then told someone else about his investment and then said, hey, you should really invest in this guy. He just did a really damn good job knowing that the community in Austin is small, being good to everybody, being passionate about what we talked about, and he took no's with dignity and grace, right? And kept going, and people spoke highly of him. And now they're doing exceptionally well, and they're doing exceptionally well. So I'm really excited for them. But that's he's a really good story, and I'd like to think I did something similar with that. But you follow the same type of things. Keep it a nice expanded network, be genuine with people, treat them well. You never know when one of them's going to refer you to somebody else. So.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I want to open it up to the audience for questions. I definitely have more questions I could ask you.
Okay.
But if anybody has any questions, just put your hand up and we'll let you ask it. Yes?
Yeah.
I have a question. You spoke a lot about getting into this industry due to getting involved in the entrepreneur.
The ecosystem?
Being in the
Overused term, but still.
physically being in the space.
Yes,
and
yeah.
seeing that as being a niche. But what experience do you have actually working with entrepreneurs and building them in the law, in the legalities background?
Yeah, so I always tell people I'm not a very good attorney. So that's the first thing. But I surround myself with exceptional attorneys. Our law practice is mostly in securities and intellectual property and business immigration. And so I know enough to be, I know the stuff. I just don't do most of the fulfillment on our products, because my job is to know our product and how we can get it done. And again, that's how I created our law practice. Our law firm got bought. The one that I started did I talk about that? That's okay. So I sold my law firm in February. Law firm Nathan and I, another guy Steven, started. We sold it in February. And the firm that we're at now, we sold into a firm that has the same product offerings, right? Corporate securities contracts, all of that. And so I had those stable of guys that are really, and then once we merged with that other firm, we have a stable of guys that are really have deep knowledge in that, especially guys that have 20, 30 plus years of experience in that corporate securities kind of space. And so so my job is to be in those spaces where I might find the potential clients, and then I have to bring them in, right? So that's the way that we built our firm, and that's how we continue to do it. And so, and the firm that bought us, they have their rainmaking partner, Sherry. She started a consumer product packaged goods incubator called the SKU Incubation Station. Has anyone ever heard of SKU or Incubation Station? So, yeah, so SKU. So the partner that started my firm, she started Incubation Station, SKU. So she was doing what I was doing before I was doing it, and then she focuses on that and another venture now. So she brought me in to kind of essentially do what she did, which was go out there and then reel them in and then bring them in and then take care of the securities and contract work and corporate work and IP and business immigration and all that stuff. So is that what you were asking? I feel like.
Yeah, I'm just curious because
maybe if there's more context, I could help.
I'm personally looking for a business attorney, so
right.
Sales and I found the right niche doesn't really tell me for my business.
Yeah. Oh no, absolutely.
That's why I'm here. So
absolutely.
Are you guys able to incorporate in Delaware?
Oh yeah. I mean, that's not a problem. So like that's not an issue at all. So yeah, it's corporate security. I'm not doing a good job of selling myself. That's not what the purpose of this thing was. But I'd be happy to chat with you.
That's what I'm here for.
Yeah, no. I'd be happy to chat with you. Probably outside of this. I mean, not that I wouldn't. I mean, I'll answer legal questions if you guys want. But I mean, so but yeah. So we do a lot of the corporate securities contracts, formations, all those type of things. Like anyone here heard of TIF treats? Yeah. So like that's our client, right? So those are kind of like level of clients we have, right? So like we have really, like pretty significant clients that we do a lot of work for. So on the corporate contracts, IP and business immigration. So actually, we brought in business immigration when we got acquired. So I go to Mexico and bring in a lot of foreign companies now. So yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yes.
I have a question about the crowdfunding business. I forgot the name
Right,
of it.
MassVenture.
MassVenture. So are there limits around the types of businesses? So
Yeah, so ours, yes, real estate focused, right? But we're not the only portal that uses these rules. There's a few other ones. And it's gonna seem like I just don't wanna give press to my competitors, but that's just not it. I just don't remember who they are. But if you were to check the State Securities Board, Texas State Securities Board, you can see the active portals in Texas that have portals up that are doing it. We're one that focuses on real estate. There's another one that focuses more on Main Street businesses like dry cleaner, restaurant, whatever. But they structure a quick payment turnaround like we do. Like they want their investors to see money within 9 to 12 months. So they structure it more as a loan, which is a privatized security. And ours look a lot more like loans anyway. We do a lot of speaking circuit tours together. They're based out of Houston, and I'm totally forgetting their name, which sounds horrible. But there's like about 3 or 4 other portals that are also doing it, and I actually can't speak to exactly what they're doing investments in. One of them is 10, I think Texas Entrepreneurs Network actually. Hal Martin runs it, so he's doing that one. I don't know exactly what kind of businesses they're on there, but like
they're all state regulated.
they're state regulated, but now that Title III passed, I actually think you're gonna see a lot of activity in the next 2 months. So you're gonna start seeing things like, I think Indiegogo said they're gonna go equity, for instance, I think. Kickstarter has no plans of doing it, although I just don't know. I hear Indiegogo, because of Title III, is not gonna start doing equity offerings. So like you're gonna start seeing, so there's some on the state level, but now that Title III passed, you're gonna actually start seeing floodgates open for that, I think, quite literally. It could be that could be game changing. So.
Yes.
This might be a little more of a personal question, but when you were in the process, sounds like you've got a lot of awesome projects that you're working on. A question that I am always asking myself is how can I manage different things going on at once? Like you were forming this company and doing all these things. How did you stay organized in that formation process / doing the sales and everything else?
Yeah, I pretty much only do the same thing time and time again. I think that's kind of the key, right? So like, you notice that one guy I was talking about, Nathan, is kind of like in the story, Nathan's like the brain, right? He would do fulfillment on the legal work or get the hard work done on the startup or that stuff. And now we've kind of like splintered off. He's got his own team now and how to do CEO and all that stuff. But I use him as an example because he and I would basically, especially in the first few years where we were going to go in a couple of years ramping up, like the only way I was able to stay sane was doing the same thing over and over again, right? So I can sell a startup on using my fund. I can sell a startup on using my law firm. I can sell an investor on investing in my product, because I'm essentially doing the same thing. I'm just in a sales role every time, right? So the way that I'm able to manage it is because I'm doing the same thing over and over again, which I think is exceptionally important, right? In time management, or like being an entrepreneur. Like some people try to take on, like, I don't know, God bless them if you can do a lot of multitasking, but I actually enjoy my weekends. So, you know, so I think that's kind of like a big thing, and that I preach, and I've learned that from mentors of mine too, right? So like when I named a couple in the legal space, but like there's, I would highly recommend if you're not going to stick with just one business and you can do several things, try to make sure you're doing the same thing every time, right? So that's how I don't go crazy, because I'm doing the same thing every time. So different customer, but I'm still doing the sales side. So.
So, for companies that are smaller than your company is, do you suggest that they outsource like other things so that they can just focus on one thing, or bring on other partners?
It depends so much. Like our crowdfunding portal, MassVenture, that one actually, we outsourced all of our development. So my partner was, but there's a reason for that. Nathan, who started it, he was a developer. He was like employee number 19 at Rackspace. Like he knows how to code, but he also knows how to manage a product. So we outsourced all the development on that so that we could hold back equity, so that we didn't have to give all our equity away. And we also know, and that's actually a tough thing too, especially for the entrepreneurs in the room. Like, I'm fascinated by how many entrepreneurs want to give their equity away. Because if you see the level of rounds of fundraising that companies do, if you give away more than 20 or 30% the first round, you will have nothing left by the time you get big. So, granted, everybody's experience is individual, and you might have a business model that necessitates giving them more equity, or whatever. But you bring up the outsourcing, and just an experience of seeing on the legal side as a lawyer who advises companies that are using outsource or giving up equity or whatever, or as a startup guy, I'm telling you that you usually have to be stingy with your equity, and also sometimes people that you think are going to be really motivated by equity are a lot more motivated by money. I mean, figure out what motivates the people that you're working with, and give them what motivates them. If they're the right fit, give them what motivates them. And if they are going to require money, or a mix of equity and money, figure out a way to get the money to pay for them if they're the right person that's a fit. But give people what will motivate them the most. And there are certain times in my life when I've been more motivated by equity and more motivated by money, and so you might have someone you have to figure that out with. So I can't really say that there's a magic bullet on that, honestly, but it's like you really got to figure out who's the right team member. I think that's first and foremost most important. I wouldn't be where I am without Nathan or Steven, the other law partner. Like, you got to find your right team members, and if you have the right team members, figure out what motivates them, right? And so that, I think, is so whether you outsource it or do it in house or give equity to somebody, there's so many different ways I've seen it done. I can't say there's one that's in particular, but I do think having the right team is exceptionally important. That's the most important thing to me. So.
Great, okay. Anybody else have a question? Yes.
Yeah, is the crowdfunding going to mess you up though with respect to like ventures? Aren't you going to create a really messy cap table? Or,
yeah, no, actually, so that's actually brought up quite a bit. Like, people talk about a nosy cap table, right? Which I think is bullshit. And I'll tell you why. So I remember going into, I set up a round table with the city, the Austin Chamber of Commerce, specifically on crowdfunding, when we were trying to get those rules written. We had the State Securities Board chair and all that stuff. And Rick Timmons, the CTAN director at the time, I like Rick, he's a really good guy. He had said that like no one in CTAN would ever participate in something like that. Well, I mean, at the time, and I don't blame him, because he didn't really know about these laws that had gotten passed, right? Well, come to find out, fast forward to like a few months ago, we were in the Final Four for the last CTAN pitches, and Rick certainly wasn't saying anything bad about us, right? So like there's this whole thing, and I think the reason I use that story is because I think once you educate the masses and you really talk about the cost benefit of like the noisy cap table scenario, when people want to invest in something really good, if it's a good product they think they can make money in, they're gonna put the money into it. A noisy cap table can be fixed. So if you have like 100, 500,000 investors, whatever, like sometimes the headache of communications with those investors, that's something you might want to worry about. But even then, you know, like the crowdfunding portals, for instance, they're encouraged to have like really robust communication with their investors. And if you look at Kickstarter or Indiegogo now, even when people are pissed off that the fulfillment date is like past, like say someone's getting a new watch that's been promised in Indiegogo and it's like 6 months late. I mean, you know, Indiegogo like makes sure to you know, tell the people that are in their projects, hey, be in touch with your investors, talk to them, communicate with them, and then you have less risk of them being upset. That to me is a lot more big of an issue than the legal issue of a noisy cap table. A noisy cap table can be fixed, people always want to be on a good deal. People aren't going to want to sit on the sidelines just because there's a lot of investors in. Sometimes, now what I have seen, especially with angel investors, is they get a little bent out of shape because of competition, right? So like one thing that I've seen angel investors get upset about, or VCs, and not all of them, right, to their credit, but just some, is like they don't want to compete. They don't want to know that there's 10 other people that want to take their spot. So if there's anything like that equity crowdfunding is going to do, is it's actually going to level, I mean, in my estimation, again, just because of the deals that we see on the legal side, it's gonna give the angels competition, right? Of course they don't want it. I mean, by and large, a lot of angels don't want it. Some do, right? Some don't care. Some find it really exciting. Our angel investors love it. But it's gonna create competition for the angels, right? They're gonna have to participate along the same terms as a non-accredited investor. And a non-accredited investor might not demand the same amount that an angel investor that was gonna give you the $400,000 is gonna demand. They might demand like preferred equity and, you know, whatever, and they're going to complain that, oh, there's too many people in the deal. But they're not really complaining that there's too many people in the deal. They're just complaining about the fact that they have to compete with the other people in the deal. And I generally find that when we dug deep on people in our research on this with accredited investors or whatever, we generally find that that's the thing. It's the investor, other investors potentially, they're upset about competing. They're not, I mean, the noisy cap table scenario is fixable. So, that's kind of my impression of it all. So.
Okay, one more question.
So I heard a lot of what you talked today is more about like high tech or technology and all that. But this is my first technology working with my team. It's a chemical composite technology, and we're trying to license this one.
Right.
So here, my team is going to people work for founding a company right now.
Right.
But we don't know which is the best entity for us, like LLC or it's an Inc. We don't really know.
Yeah. So that could be an offline conversation as well. But here's the place where I think it's fascinating that people get caught up. Okay, so I'll give a few tidbits. I realize we're going to talk about legal stuff. I'm going to give you probably some of my best words of wisdom on the legal side of things, right? First off is you can negotiate your bill with your attorney. I'm telling you that knowing that it could buy me in gas at some point. But, so that's one big thing, right? You can always negotiate the bill. There's a lot of competition amongst attorneys, and it's a lot more cost effective for me to keep you than try to find another one of you. So that's one thing. Not too far after that is what you're asking about, which is don't stress too much about your company formation size, like what kind of organization you're getting, whether it's a Delaware company or a Texas company. You actually talked about Delaware company, Texas company, Nevada company, LLC, corporation, because the attorneys out there, we can pretty much structure whatever you want around whatever entity you want. And then also, you know, not far after that is like the idea that the S Corp is an actual state entity. It's not, it's just a tax filing, it's a tax designation. That's a whole other story. But don't, like, generally the good thing about LLCs as opposed to corporations is that you have to worry about one less layer of taxes unless you do a corporation with an S election. Again, another story. So LLCs generally are a little bit easier to manage, don't have as many corporate formalities, which is nice. And you can even structure equity deals very similar to the way that you would do a corporation, right? You can do restricted equity interests on an LLC. You can do many of the same things that you would do structurally for founders and such with an LLC as you would with a corporation. And then when people say that a Delaware corporation is more investable than a Texas corporation or a Nevada corporation or an LLC, that is possibly true, but it's not really hard to convert your company from a Texas LLC to a Delaware corporation. Like if someone is going to give me $500,000, but they say you have to be a Delaware corporation, I'm going to ask my attorney to spend the $2,000 on my attorney to convert my LLC to a Delaware corporation, right? But like right before I'm saying, all right, if you give me a guarantee to give me $500,000, I'll for sure spend the $2,000 on converting to a Delaware corporation. That's fine, or 2 or 5, it depends on how complicated your LLC is. So I say to entrepreneurs, do the most cost-effective thing in the beginning, and that's actually what I would say is do the most cost-effective thing for your company in the beginning, because especially in the beginning when you're trying to conserve your cash, and again, I've seen it with our startup, just because I was building a startup and spending money on that as I was barely making money in the law firm when we were first starting off. So I understand like the cash struggles of an early stage company, and if you struggle too much on that structure, or you worry about that too much, don't worry about that too much. A good startup attorney is going to be able to coach you through and find ways for you to save money and make sure you're not spending too much. And then, because like guys like me, my payoff is when you get the next $100 million round. The next $1 million round. That's what I want you to get to, and I want you to get to that point. That said, I'm not going to do things for free, but conserve your money. Don't spend a whole bunch just because you think that's what an investor might want 2 years down the road. That would be silly. Conserve your dollar amount. So basically it's very rare that I don't counsel someone to just set up a Texas LLC. Right? I mean, we do a lot of Delaware corporations because someone wants a Delaware corporation. That's fine. Do it. It's easy. We do them all the time. But a lot of times, if someone doesn't know where they're at, and depending on the stage of the company, they haven't gotten any traction, they haven't even gotten their first customer yet, they haven't even done their first proof of concept. I mean, usually it's just set up a Texas LLC. We'll worry about the conversion stage later if you really need to set something else up, because we can structure things to do just as much. Anyways, I was long-winded on that, but the point is don't overthink that. So.
All right, well, thank you, Arsen.
Yeah.
Great advice.
Sure.
Thanks for being here with us. We're going to wrap up. Feel free to network. We have the space until around 9. If you parked in the garage underneath, there's back at that desk where that girl is sitting, there's parking validation tickets that you can get on your way out. Thank you.
Cool.
Thank you.
Thank you.